All right. So Davis, Ayanna, and Dana all passed their PMP this week. Or last week. Yay!
Wow, congrats.
This is an opportunity for them to come back to class, kind of share their experience and let you know what they went through. So let's start with Ayanna. And I want each of you to tell us as we go through, let everyone know where you took your test. Was it virtual or on site? What did you find? Was it heavy? Was it more agile? Was it hybrid, waterfall, or just a great mixture? Any unique things you may have found on the test, and then how the course has helped you as well. So Ayanna, you go first.
Yes, so I took it on Thursday. I went in person, which I preferred. I have a dog at home, and I just, at any point, he could bark about something, and that would disrupt my entire focus. So I took it in person. That was pretty simple. They gave me, at my testing site, they gave me kind of like a whiteboard that I could write things on if I needed to. So that was, like if you ever taken an SAT or something before, it's just a room really quiet. You have like a cubicle, and then they are watching you to make sure that you didn't bring anything in to the exam room. It was definitely heavy on agile, like really, really heavy on agile. I don't know that there was any question on the test that was strictly waterfall. It typically was, we're starting with waterfall or predictive, and then we're trying to move to agile methodologies or agile methods. So definitely heavy on the agile. So I would encourage everyone to look at that handbook that Kelly has suggested. I don't know what it's called, Kelly, but whatever that, yeah, to definitely look at that. I used all my time. I think the hardest thing for me, well, a couple of things. The night before, maybe the day before I took the test, I was studying really heavy on the EVM work because I'm like, I don't know these formulas well enough. I don't know this. And I was freaking out about that. There was not a single EVM question on that exam, like at all. I did not have to do math. The most math that I did was trying to calculate how much time I had remaining to do my questions. Which that timer isn't really helpful. Like it tells you how much time you have, but then you have to calculate how many questions. It stressed me out more so than anything. So at some point halfway through the exam, I just stopped looking. What else, Kelly? Am I missing something?
So tell me about the course and how it prepared you, like, what you went through with going through the content. So we have several new people in class tonight, so it'd be kind of nice to hear about your experience, maybe how long it took you to get there, and what your biggest tip would be for the new students.
So I started officially late March, but then budget season hit at my job, so it kind of derailed my whole plan for how quickly I was going to get through the content. So for the most part, at least in the very beginning, I was spending my weekends doing the studying. So I wasn't doing a lot of studying during the week. And then what ended up happening is I scheduled my exam, and that kind of put the fire under my behind to get more serious. And then too, work was kind of winding down. So I had the time. Definitely go through the content. There were certain areas that I reviewed more than once. If initially I was thinking I could just go and watch the videos once and I would be fine to take the test. But then when I would take some of the practice exams, it kind of humbled me to say, like, you need to go back and study some of these specific concepts. So definitely encourage you to watch the videos over again. I always attended the accountability calls. I think I might have missed one. And then also go to the hard questions made easy with Scott. And even if you aren't the person who's answering the questions, I would still participate as much as possible and then hear some of the rationale behind why they chose the answer that they did. I also purchased the flashcards, and I don't have them in here with me, but they're the flashcards from Amazon. Those helped me a lot because if I wasn't at home, I was able to review the content still without having to take my computer. So if I was at the hair salon, if I was at nail salon, I was able to review that type of material. But definitely encourage you, based on the exam that I took, study really heavy on agile. I was more worried about waterfall during my studying, so I wanted to make sure that I knew the processes and the inputs and outputs. but the test wasn't set up that way for me. It was more logic based and knowing what to do next as the project manager. They talked a lot about Scrum. They talked a lot about, just agile projects in general. So definitely encourage you all to study heavy on agile. Know your waterfall, but study a little bit more agile.
Yeah, awesome.
I wonder, I wonder, Ayanna, if I could ask you a question. Congrats on passing. Just wondering, like on the terminology and the vocabulary of the questions. Did they, a lot of these exams, and as we could see with our practice ones, they try to trip us up, right? They like one little word, one letter is a little off. Did you find it a lot of play on words in the questions, or wasn't that bad?
No, but I want to say it probably didn't trip me up because I studied really hard on the vocab, and that's probably my bias. Like I knew what the words meant, so I didn't find that they tried to trick me. If that answers your question. So if there were 4 answers, it might seem similar to someone who's not familiar with the content, but because I familiarized myself with the content and with that terminology and vocab, it didn't trick me. But I'm not going to go in and say every question I was like, this is easy. Like, no, I definitely spent a couple of minutes on maybe 10 questions. And a lot of times I went back and just flagged, especially when I was looking at the timer. If I found that I was spending too much time on a question, I was like, okay, we're just going to do it. Just my best guess, flag it. And then when I come back and not freaking out about how much time I have remaining, then I can review the questions. But definitely study your vocab. There's not a lot of, for example, if they use an acronym, for example, if you do, is it EP? Now I'm blinking because it's kind of like out of my mind now because I've taken the test. But basically there are acronyms that we use in the course, but they spell it out for you on the exam. So it's not going to be something where you're like, I don't remember what that means. I think it's OPA, organizational OP.
Yeah.
What is the
organizational process assets, the OPAs?
Right. So exactly. So they're not going to say OPA. They'll spell it out for you. So you don't have to get tripped up on that.
Awesome. So Dana, tell us about your experience, and then we'll have some time at the end for some questions.
So I did the exam in person, which it was nice to go in there and just kind of felt like I work from home and stuff. So it was nice to get out of the house and not be distracted. And I took the full time, which was surprising because it seems like you'd get through it pretty quickly, but, after 60 questions, I took those 10, I reviewed everything and then took that 10-minute break and then did the same after the following 60 questions. But I definitely will echo Ayanna that it was a lot of agile and I was a little surprised, but fortunately agile is also, you don't have to memorize as much with the process groups, or it's a little bit easier to grasp in some ways. So that was nice. What else? They had a lot of the drag and drop questions on when I took it. So basically matching, they'd have 4 or 5 options and 4 or 5 options on the other side. And you just had to match definitions. And then they had quite a few of pick 2, which I know that those are also in the hard questions made easy. But it went well, but it was definitely a long test.
And how long did you study for? When did you join?
I started the program late February, but it definitely, I took my time getting through the videos and then really hit it hard with studying mid-April. That's when I finished day 7 and started just focusing on studying.
Awesome. Any questions for Dana before I move on to Davis? All right. Davis, tell us about your experience.
All right. Okay. So I did it virtually. I would say my setup was a little bit rough. So give yourself time for if you do it virtually with your computer stuff. Just keep trying multiple times. For me, it randomly just worked after a couple of times because you have to have like your video on the whole time. I would schedule like a week out if you're doing it virtual. I took both my breaks, not the full time, just to like go to the bathroom and kind of reset. It is a long time. It's like 4.5, 5 hours, so it's pretty mentally exhausting. The questions, I would say, like, there were no straight up just waterfall questions. So they were all either hybrid or agile. I'd say like 60% hybrid, 60% agile, 40% hybrid. So still do all of the material, but just, I guess, if you have an area to focus, if you're weak in agile, I would definitely look at that. There's still some waterfall content, but it's all on, at least mine were in the hybrid environment, saying like, hey, you have a part hybrid or part agile, part waterfall. What do you do? Let's see. I did have my dog in my house because I couldn't get her a daycare. They're all filled, so she is kind of annoying. So if you can do something with your dog. And I had to do mine pretty early in the morning because the time's filled up even virtually. So got you out earlier. Confidence is a big thing. So what I would recommend is, I think Scott tells you this, but when you go in, if there's a hard question or a really long question that you're not confident on, read through it, take your best guess, flag it, and move on, and try and do the easy ones and like build up your confidence, because that helps a lot. A lot of it's just mental, especially virtual. You're staring at yourself for 5 hours. So I'd recommend that technique. I had like 35, 40 minutes left before my last question review. And I ended up having 20 minutes left when I submitted. So I had a little bit of extra time. I answered pretty quickly, not necessarily in a good way. So use that for what you will. I do agree with Ayanna, like the time is useless. So it just tells you your total time. It's not split into the 3 categories. So you can click on it to hide it if that bugs you. Same one, I think, with the question count. And it doesn't warn you like, hey, you're about to go into a break. So that's kind of weird, but just know that going in. Let's see. Recommendations for virtual, like clean off your whole desk. Like I had some like unrelated stuff, and I had to zoom and show the guy my desk, and I had to clean it like 3 times. So when I say clean it, make sure you clean everything. And then something that I didn't do that I'd recommend is take 3 of the practice tests back to back to back, because that'll give you a real feeling of how it feels to actually take the test. And then you can go back in and look at the questions that you missed and audit yourself and see what you need to improve on. But I think I would have, if I could go back, I would like to do that, because then you get a feeling for what it feels like to spend 4 or 5 hours taking a test, and it gives you that extra bit of confidence. I started in like early middle of March, so like 2 months. I was here. I attended every accountability and every hard questions made easy goals. I would say those calls are more useful than anything else. So good job for everyone here on the call. They're super, super helpful. Obviously you want to know the content, but talking through it, it can definitely open some doors, open some ideas for you. You'll be prepared if you get through the content, like Kelly says. Use the data dump for any go backs. It's very useful. And I guess last thing, just pay attention when you're doing the videos. Be honest with yourself if you're not understanding something. Take a break, go back, because if you spend 2 hours and you're about to fall asleep on some content, and then you go back and you're like, what is waterfall? I don't know that. Then you're gonna have to learn it. So just make sure you're paying attention when you're studying, and if you get through the course, you'll be fine.
Awesome. Congratulations, David. Super excited for you. Anyone have any questions for either Ayanna, Dana, or Davis as far as the tests, what they did to prepare, any of that?
I have a few general questions. Hello, everyone. Congratulations, everyone. That's awesome. Okay, so when you mentioned the clock on the computer, because I think I'll be taking it in person as well, is it counting down the total time in like military time, or is it like how is that? What is that about? And there's no like computer clock on there? Dana, or go ahead, Davis.
Yeah, for me, it just gave me minutes. So it's like you have 239 minutes and 40 seconds left.
Okay, and then when you flag something, once that particular section's over, you can't go back, right? You have to, okay. I wanted to clear that up. Okay.
So it's 3 60-minute sections, right? So you do 60 minutes and then you can flag. And then once you get to that section, it'll say all of the questions and it'll show all the ones that are flagged.
Mhm.
And then there's a review flagged button, which is what I did. And so then it just will go through question 4, 19, 22, 68, or 58. And you just go back and re-answer all the flagged ones. And it'll bring you back to the summary screen. Then I'll ask you like 3 times and I'll say, are you really sure? Because once that you want to submit, and then you move on to the next chunk.
Did you guess and flag it or leave it blank and flag it?
Me personally, I always guess. So I was like, all right, this is my best guess. This is my like gut instinct. My initial reading it. And then when I would go back, I would say 95% of the time, I went with whatever my gut was after rereading it. And I had a decent amount of time left over. So I would spend like 2-3 minutes on some of the questions and like read it. And most of the time it was still whatever my gut was, I would leave that.
Were there, Dana, were there any prototype questions? Those weird ones?
I don't know if the matching ones are those I think that those are the prototype ones where it's matching on either side. And then the duplicate where it's asking you to select both 2 options, but that was it. That's all I came across.
Okay. And Ayanna, one question for you. You mentioned your definitions. How did you go about, because I have the flashcards as well. How did you go about studying your definitions? What was your study habit?
So I would do the flashcards for sure. Definitely encourage you to do that. I also, when I would take the exams, even when I would watch the videos, but especially when I would take the exams, if there was a question and I'm like, okay, I've never heard of that before, I would write it down into my evaporating data dump. And then I would just go through my evaporating data dump all the time. And I did that before I would retest because I didn't want to give myself this false impression that I knew what I was talking about just because I looked at the question 5 minutes, at the definition 5 minutes ago. So I would I would take the test, do my evaporating data dump, maybe spend a day or 2 studying my evaporating data dump, and then I would retake some of the practice exams. And to Davis's point, I did take the test in a row, and that definitely helps to build up your mental stamina because it is exhausting. I used the full time, so I didn't have 20 minutes left over. I had a couple, maybe like 5 minutes to review my flagged questions, but it definitely is exhausting because you're there for 4 hours and there's so much content, and it'll tell you in addition to the timeline, in addition to the timer, it'll tell you how many questions you have left over. So you might think that you've gotten through 75 questions and it's like, you've only done 30. And it's like, crap, there's so much more to get through. So
does it count how many you're doing, or it doesn't say question 5, questions? It does. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's the way that instead of me looking at the timer, because then it started to freak me out, the way that I separated it, it was like, okay, if I did 60 questions, I knew my break was coming up. And then if I got to 120, I knew my break was coming up. So that was the way that I was able to divide up the time.
All right, one more silly question about the whiteboard, because I'm 53. They didn't have that back in the day. Is it a Sharpie or a Sharpie, as I say, or is it a eraser board, or is it a pen? What is it?
It's like a kind of like I guess it's like like it's not necessarily paper, but it's something that you can write on, that if they gave you tissue paper to wipe off, you could. But the lady told me that I wasn't able to erase anything. I don't know what that was about. So whatever I wrote on the paper, I had to then hand back to her at the end of my test. So I don't know if they wanted to think I was cheating or something, but
is it both sides or one whiteboard? So
no, there were like 3 different pages of that type of material. So it was almost laminated, I think. So they gave you a piece of like a Sharpie or washable marker that you were able to write on, and you have plenty of paper to write on, so you don't have to worry about that.
Because I heard that 2 years ago when I first took the PMI course, didn't obtain, retain any information. Everyone said it was one piece of paper, that's it. So that's changed. Okay.
I had a lot of paper.
Okay.
And what I ended up doing as soon as I got in there, because again, I was freaked out about the EVM formulas, I immediately went in and wrote down all the formulas. and I didn't use one of them. So that's not to say don't study the formulas. It's just that my test, there was no need for it. So
Okay,
yeah.
thank you guys.
Awesome. Anyone else before I let the newly PMP certified?
Yeah, I had a quick question. How did that work with like paper virtually? Like, were you able to, I guess Davis had like a piece of paper to write on virtually, or was it different rules?
So you have a virtual whiteboard. So it's
Okay.
basically just imagine like Microsoft Paint.
Got it.
And so you can use your cursor to write stuff or draw stuff. And then you also have like a virtual calculator. So if you wanted to draw like a formula, which I don't think you'll need to do, or draw, the only thing is like for the 5 matching questions, if you want to draw those out, or like draw some process flows for like critical path crashing, or like what is a critical path? That's what I used it for. But generally, I would say you maybe use it once. So that's it.
And one other question related to like taking it virtually, like what was like this time for setup complete compared to like just getting online and until you started actually taking the test? Like,
Yeah, so mine was a while because I had to clean my desk 3 times because it has to be absolutely clean, like nothing in at all there, not even like a paper clip. They're like pretty strict. So I logged on 15, 30 minutes early. Like queue time was pretty quick, but then like you like Zoom call with someone, they talk to you, you show them your desk, take pictures. It's pretty easy as long as everything goes well. So I would say log on like 15 minutes early, and if your desk is clean, you'll probably be taking it about the time. But you can log on 30 minutes early and I think like 15 minutes late. So you have like a 45-minute window to log on. And I know in the course they say that you can wait a while, but for me I didn't have to wait very long. And then you have a proctor and you can ask them questions the whole time. So once I got into it, I didn't have any tech issues. It was smooth sailing.
Cool. Awesome. Any other questions before I let them go?
Yeah, really quickly, what about a mouse pad and a clock and your own clock? Like I have a clock on my desk and I'm going to take it virtually. So I'm
They
assuming
have a
clean, they want
list.
me to just erase everything. They want me to take everything off my desk, just got my mouse and my keyboard.
So PMI has a list of like approved stuff. Maybe you can reference that.
Okay.
What were the 2 things you said you had?
I was just asking about a mouse pad and a clock.
Mouse pad, you're good. You
Okay.
usually should be good. And then a clock, it might make it take it off your desk.
Sure.
It depends on the proctor, but you can like put it on your wall or somewhere else if you want.
All right, cool. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm super excited for you. Congratulations.